you have an interesting title, you're a chief futurist, and we want you to talk about what it means to be a futurist in the field of UX design and storytelling, and kind of how all those things come together. And it's a really, really fun kind of thought process and topic. And the question that I get most when I meet other colleagues, when I meet people in the industry, is what the fuck is a futurist? Like, what kind of time? What do you actually do on a daily basis, right? And so, what's a futurist, and what does it have anything to do with UX design and storytelling? And first, though, what is flow? Do you guys know what flow is? Can we do virtual hands inside the classroom if anybody knows what flow is? Has anybody experienced flow before? Yeah, we got some thumbs up. Cool. Flow is really interesting. Flow is something that is completely impossible virtually to pin down if you want to describe it, right? If you've been in a conversation with somebody and you're talking to somebody, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at you guys. You're in a conversation with somebody and talking to somebody, and you just completely get lost in the conversation, right? Maybe you're on a date, maybe you're in a vid chat back in the old world days of actually seeing people in person, right? Like you've got tunnel vision. You're in a coffee shop, cafe, you're on campus, whatever you're doing, nothing else matters, right? You're finishing each other's sentences. You have time dilation. Sometimes time just moves really quickly. Sometimes it completely freezes. That happens more in deep flow states. But that's a flow state, right? That's part of flow. Have you ever gone for a run? You go out for a run and you just completely get lost in the run. You don't remember how you got where you got to, and you don't remember taking the steps. You don't remember a lot of the journey, but you completely got lost in it, right? Or you're working. Right, you're working and maybe you're writing a paper, maybe you're coding something, maybe you're designing something, and you're just lost in it. Maybe you're collaging, and like an hour, 2 hours goes by, and it's like you didn't do the work. The work like did itself, right? And it's really, really incredible to think about this kind of experience and how this relates to anything else as well. Right? It feels really good to come out of an experience like this. Often when we come out of experiences like this, we feel altered, we feel changed. And there's good reason for it. There's a neurochemical reason for it as well. But this feeling, it is absolutely indescribable. And as evidenced by a few of you guys who thumbs up or hands up virtually, you know what it's like. You've experienced it before. These are extraordinary experiences. These are the same underpinnings of experiences that pro athletes, that professional designers, that some of the greatest leaders in our history have experienced when they've had these massive epiphanies that completely change our trajectory. So what if you had experiences like this every day? Right? Most people don't have experiences like this every day. It's really the more creative bunch in the population that have these types of experiences more every day. But if you did have these kinds of experiences every day, you'd be superhuman, right? You'd be doing things in a way where you are so creative, so driven, so connected with the experience that you're having, that you're doing things you never thought possible before. So flow is a state of consciousness, and that state of consciousness maximizes our human potential. It does things nothing else, no other state of consciousness can give us. It allows for us to creatively engage in an active decision-making process. And that strings together a sequence of pattern-based reactions to real-time inputs and measures those against real-time results. So what the hell does all that mean? Think about it for a second. You get into a car. You want to drive somewhere. You walk over to your car. You don't really look at the door handle. You open the door handle, right? And as long as things work the way that you expect for them to work, you don't even notice opening the door handle. You go to put your key, if you still have a key that goes into ignition, if it's not just a remote fob, right? You go to sit down at the steering wheel. You're doing things that you don't even notice, and you don't notice them because they don't break our expected pattern recognition, right? And when we have this constant feedback loop and we're doing things that we expect to happen and those things happen, we don't pay any attention to it. And that also happens in the workplace. It also happens when you're doing schoolwork. That also happens if you've ever gone skiing before, if you've ever gone mountain biking before, if you've ever been in a sport where you're playing with a team and you're all in flow at the same time. And when you're in this experience, you look around yourself and you don't actually think about what everybody else is doing. You're in this creative space and all the things happen on their own. So flow is really special. Flow comes with some very specific neurochemicals. It comes with, one of them is anandamide. Anandamide actually creates a very similar feeling to smoking weed. It's a precursor to what the effect that you have when you're getting that exogenously through a chemical like marijuana. Flow removes fear, critical thinking, future planning processes. What does that mean? Well, if you don't have fear or the memory of fear, you're not inhibited by your fear. If you're not critically thinking, you're not thinking about possible futures. You're thinking about this very moment. You're thinking about now. And by virtue of that, you cannot make you can't make plans for the future. All those future planning processes are gone. Watch a little kid, a 2-year-old. I have a 2-year-old in addition to this, almost 2-year-old, the 8-year-old that you saw blaze through here, right? That 2-year-old has no choice. All she can do is be present. She sits down to play and do something. She is the fuck in the experience she's having right now. Nothing else matters. And therefore, this type of experience, this type of neurochemical mix allows for us to be here now. The key here, and I dropped a few of these throughout the presentation, the key is that this state of consciousness is the source of your life's best work. Actually, if you think about it, and please, anybody come back and disprove this later on, all of our society, all of humans' greatest accomplishments, the things that were previously thought to be impossible, that were then made to be possible, came from a state of flow, came from this state of consciousness. You think about people like Albert Einstein, Thomas Edison. You think about how they created the things that they created. They didn't just do one project at a time. They worked on lots of concurrent projects, not all at the same time, but over the course of this year, for example, they may have worked on 10 or 20 or 50 different projects. What happens is when they leave their work, when they leave what they're doing, what they're trying to do, and they go do something else, and they get lost in the process, their mind figures it out. When they're present, their mind figures out what they actually need to solve. And then they're able to bring that back into their existing work. You think about people like, actually, this is another just a fantastic point. You think about the Elon Musks of the world. You think about Solar City. Think about SpaceX. Think about Tesla. Think about Hyperloop. These ideas came out of a flow state. These ideas came out of Burning Man, out of extended group flow states. And if you think about how profound this realization was of, well, if we want to become an interplanetary species, we need battery capacity to completely shift. We need rockets to be reusable. We need autonomous drive so we can drop vehicles, we can drop equipment, laser cut 3D print, manufacture equipment on another planet that we can't get resources to on a regular basis, and have all that start to work itself out. Also increase solar capacity, right? The ability to harness the power of the sun, right? We needed a regen source. All of these things needed to be possible in order to terraform Mars, in order to go and become an interplanetary species. All of that was part of the same creative process. It was all part of the same thing. These are not disparate thoughts. And if you think about how profound, how impactful a thought process, a flow state can be to us as a society, to humans, to the human race, I mean, holy shit, it's profound. And these are things that we can do on a daily basis, and we can have our own knowledge of the projects that we're working on, and we can tap this state of consciousness too. So has anybody told you ever, please do the virtual hands as well, to be present or mindful? Right? What does that mean? What does that mean to you? And I can, if anybody wants to talk, I don't know, I'm not the host, so I can't necessarily unmute anybody. I don't know if you guys are all muted. Does anybody want to kind of say what being present or mindful means to them? If you don't, I can take it as well. That's fine too. So I have a mindfulness practice. It's actually a gratitude practice. I do it twice a day. I do it with my kids. Well, specifically with my son. My daughter is still 2. She's barely speaking, or almost 2, actually. We do this gratitude practice every day. And what we think about, in this practice, what we're doing is we mention 3 things that we're grateful for. It's part of another process in the morning and the evening before we go to bed. We align our focus, our attention on the things that we're grateful for today. What do? We think about 3 things that we're grateful for, and we go between the 2 of us and we talk about them. The rules are you can't repeat them, and you have to start with something that you can feel right now. I'm really grateful for this hat right now. It's keeping my head warm, and I feel like I'm a bald dude. All right, it's keeping my head warm, and I feel really good having this hat on right now because I feel nice and cozy. And once I can actually feel that for a moment, it draws me into being present, right? That's why we do that first. And what comes after that? Anything else. I'm so grateful that I'm healthy today. I'm so grateful that I have my kids around me, that my son inspires me to be creative, that my daughter inspires me to be in flow, that my wife is my best friend and my partner, right? And thinking about things like that, it aligns our focus on now. It does a lot more than that as far as focusing on good things go. And I highly encourage that. I highly encourage you guys to try that for a week straight. Try it in the morning, try it in the evening, and see what happens. I guarantee you it will change something about your life, and you will feel a lot better in some way, shape, or form. If you don't, I also want to hear about it because you'll be the first to ever tell me that. Are you present right now? This is where it starts to get real crazy, right? Are you looking at your phone? Are you looking at your watch? Are you looking at another screen? I'm looking at most of you guys, and I can see that most of you are actually looking right back at me. I don't know if you're reading something else because I can't see the light of the screen shining back on your faces. But here's the crazy part. If you are doing anything else, if you are checking an email, a text, any other notification, you're there, not here. You're there, not here. If you're working right now, if you're studying right now, if you're doing something, if you're trying to produce something creatively, and you get a notification, you allow for yourself to be pulled into that notification for just a split second. You're there, not here. If you're there, not here, you cannot be in flow. It is impossible to be in flow if you are there and not here. It is an all-consuming state. And on average, every single one of us picks up our phone 110 times a day to check a notification. Shit, 110 times a day. If we're sitting and we're working on a project and we pick up our phone to look at a notification, Trump said this, this other tasking meeting, Pfizer found this other thing. Holy shit, I'm there, not here. And what happens? How do I combat that? Well, put the phone down. I turn off my notifications. Literally, our phones, we are slaves to our phones, and our phones are designed to be slaves to us. We have the choice of turning off notifications. We have the choice of going into D&D mode, do not disturb mode. Right? We have the choice of hitting option click on our notifications on our computers to turn off. That's a great hack, by the way, if you use a Mac. Option click on the little 3 bars at the top right corner, turns off your notifications immediately. You get no notifications. Holy crap. Now you can use these powerful tools, and you can use them, you can own them, you can leverage them, harness them. Flow, it's a creation engine. This is fucking profound. When I don't know if I told everybody this, but I started when we started talking about this work, what you're seeing today, this is an original work. I produced this for you for today, and I produced this while out on runs. So I work out during the week. On Saturday morning, I go for a long run. I usually run about a half marathon. So I'm out for almost 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm just running. And what happens when I'm out running? My mind just clears out. I drop the fuck into an exercise induced flow state as I'm doing this. I wrote this entire thing while I was running. I picked up I tapped, I said, hey Siri, record this voice note. And then I'd record a voice note, or I'd say, hey, text myself this. And all the bits and pieces here, I didn't have to sit here in front of a blank screen. I was in a state of flow, in this creation engine state. And it allows us to imagine anything, and our brains go naturally to what we need to focus on. And I could pluck that idea straight out of my imagination and deliver it fully formed into reality. I can save the thing, then I can go sit at my computer and I can type the thing. And I just pull that concept right from like my deep, the core of my consciousness, and I just brought that out. And now I can share it with the world. And that's a lot of what being a designer is about. That's a lot of what being an artist is about. That's a lot of what doing your best, life's best work is about, right? If you're, we can go deeper in this, but I don't want to make this too long. I'm very, as you can probably tell, I'm super passionate about this, right? Here's the craziest part. Flow's limits are only bound by our creativity. Where does this go, right? You want a straight mind explosion right here? Our performance is only governed by our creativity. Wow. Wow. Right? If your flow's limits are only bound by your creativity and human performance, the things that you thought to be impossible before can only be created from this flow state. Your creativity is the only governor over what you can achieve. Look at skateboarding. Look at snowboarding. I always bring in adventure sports for lots of different reasons. They force flow specifically because when you're risking life and limb, you have to be in flow to survive. That is part of our biology. It's part of how we were created, right? If you look at how we evolved, if you look at if we look at, right, I don't know what you think or how you feel. I'm just trying to make sure it's resonating with you. You look at the greats of skateboarding, and I'm bringing this up for a very specific reason. You look at the greats of snowboarding. You look into the 90s, the longest jump on a snowboard that people thought was possible, that people in physics thought was possible. I do listen to music on my run sometimes. That people thought was possible was 40 meters. 40 meters, about 2 school buses. Within the course of 15 years, that changed to almost 400. That is like the equivalent of going from running a 4-minute mile to a mile in 45 seconds. That's fucking crazy. And how does that happen? That happens because we've got people that are growing up and learning to use flow as children, as kids, as young adults, as you are, and learning to leverage that and learning to build on top of that. We see something, we see one of the people that we thought was way better than us do something, and we say, holy shit, that person did something, and I did that also, and I'm only 12 or 15 or 18 or 25. Dude, just wait till I'm 20 or 25 or 30 or whatever it is. I will for sure surpass this. And that's what's happened across surfing. This is so crazy. You look at surfing in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. You look at the history of the sport. This is a maybe 1,000-year-old sport, right? This is not a new sport, right? You think about how the sport has evolved and what people thought was possible for hundreds of years. And then one day you have this crazy person who is so deep and such a master, so deep in flow and such a master of what they do that they come in and say, you know what? By the way, in the 90s, I don't know if you know about this, but tow surfing came around so that people could catch bigger waves. There were scientific articles published about what the largest possible wave somebody could catch it was, and why was it Why was that so? Because as you try and catch a wave, you got to start swimming. You got to start swimming. You got to keep up with the speed of the water. If your speed matches the speed of the water, you catch the wave and then you accelerate past it and then you ride the wave, right? But if you can't catch up to the speed of the water, you're hosed, man. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and this thing comes crashing down on you. You're done, man. It's a 40-foot wave, 50-foot wave, 60-foot wave. It's impossible to survive things like this unless you are there, right? And then there's another one, and then there's another one. It's the washing machine. It's horrible, right? So what happens? Somebody somehow dropped straight down into this wave, and I'm not going to bore you with names. All of a sudden, people were like, holy shit, this can be done. And then 50 and 60 and 70 and 80 and 100-foot waves were caught by people who for hundreds of years thought that it was physically impossible. Physicists writing papers on why it was impossible. And what happened in the last 30 years that allowed for us to shatter records, record after record? Skateboarding. Look at Shaun White snowboarding. Look at people like Tony Hawk skateboarding, right? These people did things that were looked at as impossible. And then Red Bull came in and said, we're going to bring the macho chisma side of this out, and we're going to sell tons of product because we're going to say that our product is the thing that's making these people able to do these things. Really, they were just ideologically in line in that from that perspective, but they flipped it to marketing, which is brilliant, side note. But you have these people who have the equivalent of startups being built behind them, right? These are very, very expensive endeavors to build a 40-foot, 60-foot ramp in the middle of near the Great Wall of China to jump. Like this is $500,000. That's a startup right there. And we don't know if the person's going to succeed or not. So how many of you guys, virtual show of hands, how many are under 25? Cool, most of us, if not all of us. I have news for you. You guys are at a super advantage. Remember I talked about my 2-year-old daughter? Why is she at a super advantage? You guys, your frontal lobe isn't fully developed, which is fucking fantastic. Why is that fantastic? Because that means that your brain, your resting brain frequency, I don't know if you know this, but your brain runs at a specific pitch, at a specific frequency. A million years ago, I'm 37, almost 38, a million years ago, I did a project where I mapped brain frequency to sound and to color, and how sound manipulated brain frequency, which displayed as color, pitch of sound, pitch of brain frequency, pitch of color. All those things came together in this wacky project. What's so crazy about this? You're sitting in a borderline flow state all the time. All the time. You can drop in, come back out, drop in, come back out. Why is it so important to be here, be present while we're engaged in the flow state? Because the minute we get pulled out, for the majority of us, especially those of us over 25, we get pulled out of flow, it takes us 10 to 15 minutes to get back in. That's crazy. If I'm sitting and I get a text every 15 minutes, I get a notification every 15 minutes, I'm never in flow. I spend a whole day, I get nothing done. You guys can flip-flop so easily. And if you learn to do this while it's easy, or it takes days, true, right? If you learn to do this when it's easy for you, what happens? You make that into a habit. Some of the greatest philosophers of our time, psychologists of our last couple hundred years, they thought it was only the top 10% of people who should even be trying to strive for this state. But the reality, it's everybody. It's everybody. It unlocks our creativity and it allows for us to be a creative. But here's the crazy part. Everybody's a creative. Not everybody realizes that they're a creative, because not everybody spends the time to get into flow, to understand it, to hack our biology, to do the things we want to achieve, that we want to do. And so when people say, am I a creative? Are these people a creative? Are these people creatives? Everybody's a fucking creative. How many of us understand how to be creative? How many of us understand the biology of it? I spend every free moment that I have to build in researching and trying to understand more about how I can hack my biology and what things I can do to get myself into flow so I can continue to produce my life's best work. So what does all of this have to do, or any of this have to do, with UX design? Being a designer, doing anything, as we just said, that involves creativity requires flow, right? You ever get mad? You ever get really mad? What happens when we get mad? All of a sudden, we have this massive cortisol release in our system. And what happens? We go fight or flight. What is fight or flight by definition? It's a fucking limiting state of consciousness. You can fight, you can fight, you can fly, get the hell out of here, or you can freeze, right? A lot of us freeze. It is the antithesis of a flow state. A flow state is not a state filled with cortisol. It's a state filled with anandamide, dopamine, norepinephrine, all these chemicals that keep telling us, hey, that thing you just did, that feels really good. You just discovered something, do that again. Do that again. Do something like that again that feels like that again, right? Most people, most adventure athletes, adventure sports enthusiasts, they're actually not adrenaline junkies. Adrenaline is cortisol. You can't do much with cortisol. What happens when you're filled with cortisol? You're stuck, right? You're in this limiting, by definition, limiting state of consciousness. It's the opposite. They're flow junkies. They want the feedback loop that comes along, the chemical feedback loop that comes along with creating, with doing things that have never been done before. 1,204. That number means nothing to most people. It means everything to me today. I've built 1,204 products over the course of my career, and I'm about to start another one today. Think about what that means for a moment. 1,204 products required preliminary meetings, idea meetings, understanding of what the idea is, getting everybody in line, requirements documentation. Have you ever heard of CRUD operations? Does anybody know what CRUD operations is? Create, read, update, delete. If you're ever designing software, you have to think through CRUD operations by user type. Can this person create a message? Can they delete a message? Can they update a message? Think about your messages application. Can you update a message? No. Can you create one? Yes. Can you delete one? Yes. Can you read one? Yes. Can you update it? No. Right? CRUD operations define everything in software. I have thousands of pages of CRUD operations, right, that have been created for this. Think about how much thought has to go into that. Think about all of the people that had to be coordinated, the pixels that had to be pushed, the design systems that had to be created, the fonts that had to be selected, the colors that had to be selected, the typographic hierarchy, the visual hierarchy. Think about all those things for 1,204 products. Then think about all the ideas that didn't happen. Those are completed products. Then on top of that, I created over 10,000 ad campaigns in my early career. 10,000 every time you see one when you're going down your Facebook feed, that's one. That had a preliminary meeting, objectives, KPIs, key performance indicators that you were trying to look for. I mean, think about how much that simple number represents. Tens of thousands of hours of work. Oh, and that doesn't even include the work that I did as a jeweler. I created physical items as a jeweler. That's a whole separate conversation, right? And the best work that I did as a jeweler wasn't actually making the things. It was realizing, oh my God, there's a better system than this. Why are we doing all this with paper in 2000, 2001, 2003? We should just connect the source and the cutting houses and the certification processes with all the people. And we should just cut out all these middle people. What are they doing? That was when I had this aha moment of, why am I working on one thing for one person instead of making massive systems that append and rearrange existing thought processes and systems? So with that, I have expert knowledge now in building products in over 31 industries. Ad tech, real-time bidding platforms, aerospace. I've done friend or foe systems for the government, not for the government. My team created the world's first air traffic control system for drones. Biometric sensory hardware software created things that propel themselves, that regenerate their battery power as you walk on grass because there's static electricity from there. Dating apps, e-commerce, entertainment. E-commerce is like this massive monolith of things that can be included in there. Fine jewelry, fitness, health and beauty, healthcare. I created the world's first electronic medical record system that was interoperable with virtually every existing system. And I did that standing on Apple's shoulders. I created something that leveraged some of their code that made it interoperable at a time when nobody was even thinking about this. This is 2012, 13, 14, right? High fives, that's a joke. Hydration system. I created a system that allows for drivers in NASCAR to be able to get notifications of when they need to drink water and have that work on an automated basis with science behind why they need small bursts of water instead of large ones, instead of small breaks of just guzzling a Gatorade, right? These people are behind in cars for hours. Think about the UX problems there when everything is going like this the whole time, right? Ticketing. I don't even want to start that one because that one just goes on forever and ever. I built biofeedback systems in virtual reality and augmented reality where your thoughts control what you see in front of you. And that scared the shit out of me because the people who wanted to buy that were advertisers and the fintech space, right? Those people wanted to see our biological, our neurosignature as it relates to the stimulus that we're seeing. If I see a blue Mercedes or a blue Toyota or a blue phone, does that make me want it? What does my brain say? Not what do I think, what does my brain say? Where do I get the little squirt that says, oh yeah, that's good, right? That's scary as shit. Direct to consumer marketing. I'm not even gonna go deeper into the space. The idea here is if you've created products in all of these spaces because you sought to deeply understand a problem in this space, and then once you sought to deeply understand the problem, you created a solution. You have to understand all the other solutions in this space. Think about how much research goes into there. You're UX designers, that's your world. It's research, it's data, it's creating solutions for problems that you never knew existed before. Because what is a designer? A designer is a professional problem solver. That's what we are. We don't have to be experts in any one industry. We have to be experts at applying a process that we've honed, that we've developed, or that we've inherited and then developed and iterated on to find solutions in any industry, especially if you're looking to work in the field of software design. Why? Because every industry requires software. No industry is immune to software. And if you're designing solutions for problems across every industry, you're never going to know everything in every industry. It's just not possible. Think about Strut Club that Brandon worked on, right? This app, this is structure for instructors of spin classes. I'd never taken a spin class when I met the founder. Never in my life. I did Peloton a couple times at the gym that I was at, but I never took a spin class. And here I was, this guy over here who knows shit about this industry has to come up with the solution that's going to change the industry forever. Think about what that means. That's the exciting thing about being a designer. You get to constantly think and constantly explore and constantly develop solutions and learn about new industries. If you're a UX designer, like you guys, like the class that you guys are in, you also need the ability to document your findings. As I said, this is a data-focused role, right? You need to be able to document your findings and set up your team members for success so that they can succeed. On my team, the UX designer works with a product architect and and then in tandem, as the two work together, they seek to understand who the user is, to understand the user needs, problems, wants, nice to haves, prioritizing all of their needs. Have you ever heard of a Moscow chart? Yeah, maybe, no? Must have, should have, could have, won't have, right? The things that every user wants. Definitely, if I want to be able to make a cup and I want to be able to drink out of the cup, it needs to hold water. What do I not want it to be? Really heavy. Why? Because I can't pick it up to drink the water. Must have, won't have. Could have a straw, right? It could be insulated so that I can have hot drink or cold drink and keep it for a long time. So you need to understand your user type as a UX designer your users, your target users, understand how they relate to the problem. Wow, Siri's recording this whole thing. That's awesome. You have to understand these user types as well. And you have to architect the solution so that it works for the users. Would this handle work for me if my hands were 5 times as big as they are? No, right? By understanding me as a user, you have to, as a UX designer, have to understand what works, what I can put my fingers in, right? But there's more. Everyone on your team is counting on you and your research to lay the foundation and iterate on what's been done. You have maybe the most important role on a design team. You create that good feeling that somebody using your product has. That good feeling comes from a byproduct of all of the things working together, of the interactions, the sense of delight that you get, the quick realization that the designers got exactly what I wanted and what I needed and created that for me. The interface, right? That's the thing that you don't control. But everything else, you have a lot of control over and you really influence. So no pressure, right? Everybody's relying on you. As a project starts, it's the product architect and the UX designer on my team that work together to figure out what it needs to be, work with the client to figure out what the client thinks it needs to be, works with end users to figure out if the solutions that we're iterating on actually are the solutions that are needed. And then what happens? We give all that documentation to a user interface designer, and then they make it look right. We wire it out, they make it look ideal. Then they design the interactions. They design the way the thing actually feels. And then those people give it over to developers. And depending on the team structure that you're in, right? With developer, then you have a developer, somebody who's actually going to code it, who's going to make it, who needs to see all the documentation about how all the things work. They need to see everything arranged on a table and the logic behind it, need to understand all that stuff. And then once they're done developing that thing, bless you, Serena. And once they're done figuring out that thing, you have to come back. And then what happens? They have to check it and make sure it does the thing that they thought it was going to do, that you thought it was going to do. And then you get to look at the data of how people are actually using the product and say, you know what? If that button was just, if it actually said what it needed to say instead of giving an icon, then people would know what to do. And they would click on it and they would use it and they'd get the value out of the product. But shit, we hid that thing that people actually end up wanting, right? But you're good though. Why are you good? Because you've got creativity. You've got a process to solve any problem. You've mastered flow, and therefore you can use your superpower, creativity, which is only bound by what? Your creativity. Bam. It's nuts. Your potential is fucking infinite. You can do anything. Your only limit is your creativity, and your ability to get into a creative state and be creative more often is directly correlated to your ability to be creative. Because if you do it regularly, you flex that muscle. You know what it feels like. You know how to drop right in. I came into this meeting, I don't know any of you. And if I am to give you anything of quality, I need to give you passion. I need to give you a flow state. I need to be present. I need to give you that presence. And as I'm present with you, you can feel it. I know you can feel it. I don't have to ask you. I know you feel my passion from beginning to end, because this is a big part of my life and it's really important to me. And also a big part of my life is serving others. I love to serve others. I get so much joy out of serving others. It makes me I feel super fulfilled, not by somebody else's gratitude for what I do. I expect nothing in return, but I get a lot out of giving. A famous person that I spoke with once, that I was neighbors with once in my office, actually at a WeWork, which I love for separate reasons, not that particular brand, whole different conversation, right? He said, if your hands are open to give, they're open and you can receive as well. If your hands are closed and you're holding everything tight and you don't want to give, what happens? Your hands are closed. You can't catch anything like this. I mean, you can try, but you're going to be dropping shit, right? Have your hands open. Try to give. See what happens. Give more. So what about this futurist thing? What the hell does that mean? How does that even relate? Why are we speaking about flow for 43 minutes, which hopefully you felt like was 2 minutes, right? What about this futurist thing? Well, when you deeply understand hardware and software, and those two are inextricably intertwined, you can't mistake that. I wish I put you guys over here and the words over there because I'm not reading them anyway. What happens, right? And you have practical, expert level, lateral experience across dozens of industries. Now you're taking your problem solving process, you're doing the Einstein, you're doing the I'm not comparing myself to, it's just the methodology, right? You're doing the Einstein, you're doing the Edison, right? You're taking all these lateral experiences on these different projects and you're bringing them together and converging those thought processes on this laser focused thing that you're working on. And you understand how to sculpt teams and processes because you've worked with lots of people and you've worked through lots of processes. And the process that I have today is different than the process I had a month ago, and it's different than the process from a year ago. It's generally the same, that every new team member brings their own perspective and they iterate on it and evolves. And I'm turning over actually a team that I developed to someone else to see what they do. Why? Because I want to see what happens to this thing when I'm not involved. What happens if I'm not the director of this thing? What happens if somebody else does that? If you can do all these things and sculpt teams and processes to achieve new, previously impossible outcomes, right? That's what we were talking about with flow. When you're creating impossible outcomes, things that we never thought possible before, those are coming from a state of flow. Because you've reached mastery in all of those roles. I've been the waiter, literally. I've been the waiter, I've been the restaurant manager, I've been the designer, I've been the graphic designer, I've been the assistant, I've been the client services manager, I've created the campaigns, I've done the strategist role, I've done the UX designer role for a long time, and I'm still a UX designer. You can't take that out of me, ever, 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 ever. Everything is an experience, including this conversation. That's when you're a futurist. That's when you're a futurist. Why? Because by definition, if you understand flow, you understand how to get into flow, you understand how to apply flow to your work, to what you're doing, that's what makes you a futurist, because you're constantly thinking through new impossibilities. And these things are now being plucked from your brain, fully formed into reality. Now they're possible. You're a futurist. Most people think a futurist, if they actually have ever spoken to one, looked up a definition of one, thought about what that might mean. Most people think a futurist is somebody who lives in the future mentally, right? They're like, okay, well, to a degree, it's correct, right? Like, I understand where computers are today. I understand where mobile devices are today. I understand where software, web limitations are, where app limitations are. I understand where the health industry is at. Therefore, I can ideate on new solutions for those spaces. And that technically is partially true. But to be a true futurist, to really re-engineer what is possible, you need to be in a flow state on a regular basis. You need to understand flow. You need to understand the biology of flow. Because without it, you can't really be a futurist. So now you're thinking about how to structure teams, products, so that you ensure that they thrive over time, right? So this is as a futurist, now you're able to think about all the things together. You're able to be in a flow state. You're able to think about how flow state relates to teams, how flow state relates to team structures. I have a whole fucking system of how to use Slack, because I use Slack to communicate with my team members every day. And if I don't use it right, it is constantly interrupting me. I go through whole days. I don't know what the hell I did at the end of the day. Like I supported a lot of people. No, you have to be able to leverage these systems to serve you, not be subservient to them. So some of the recent design hires on my team were just look at this bit, right? Illustrator and DJ. He's been doing UI design for a long time, product design for a long time at this point. Set designer for almost a decade. Dancer. Took a UX design boot camp, then pivoted her career path. A fashion designer with experience designing accessories and jewelry for some very big labels that I'm sure you all know of, right? Took UI boot camp, pivoted career path. Print and graphic designer with years of experience working with big brands, pivoted career path. Want to focus on learning new tools and a modern stack, even though their title before was much higher than they came in with. What's similar about all these people, right? If you think about it, they all came from different industries. Look at SpaceX. Look at designers of new spacesuits. Look at new spacesuits. Holy shit. Did you guys see that ISS mission? Did you see their new spacesuits? Aside from the problems with the helmet coming up and hitting the backrest and it constantly pushing down, which looked like a fun fail. Only when we're in this position, when we're still on Earth, right? These suits, these spacesuits, and these teams came from, these spacesuits, these products came from new teams, a new way of thinking about teams, a culturally diverse, a laterally thinking group of people that came from different industries, expert in fashion designer, experts in textiles manufacturing, not NASA engineers, not the same pool of people, new group of people, new diverse perspectives. And what happens? These people come together. Why did these people come together so well? Because the thing that was ever present across all of them is they all had a growth mindset. They all look to the future and look to improve on themselves. Nobody is sitting on their laurels, and I am not sitting on my laurels. I brought up all of those things so I could explain what perspectives. I could never articulate this in any other way that I think other people would understand, but to say, this is how I got here, and this is how my mind thinks, and this is how you can think too. That's what it means to be a futurist. All of these people left different jobs. And why did they leave their different jobs? Because they weren't being challenged anymore. Because they had leadership over them that said, no, you're a fashion designer, and we have all these layers on top of you, and you don't get to think for yourself. You're a set designer, and because I'm in Hollywood, I'm going to be an asshole to you. That's not everybody. Stereotypes, obviously, right? But I'm going to be an asshole to you, and I'm going to do my thing, and I'm going to have people serving me, and you're going to do that. I didn't like how that worked out. You got to reset that now. You got to redo all that. No gratitude, no appreciation, right? You look at people. One of them came from Disney. How much gratitude do you think an illustrator at Disney gets? Not a whole lot, right? Not a whole lot. An executive says, I don't like purple. You can't use purple anymore. Think about that for a second. Someone says, I don't like this color. You can't use it in the product anymore. That's bonkers. That is stifling. That is not and, that is or. That is, you have no other choices. That is the opposite of creativity. And why do they like being on this team? Because we're 100% focused on flow, and that's what all of them love. They're all growth mindseted people, which means that every single person on that team loves to collaborate, loves to create, loves to be in flow, loves to have creative brainstorming sessions. It feels really good, especially being in a group, larger group. Nobody wants to leave. Why? There's no limit. There are no ceilings. It is just like creativity, which is bound by what? Creativity. It has no limit. And the process of growth is the reward. So everyone is getting better every day. And the getting better is the damn reward. So everybody wants to keep getting better. And not only is everybody getting better and wanting to get better, but their biology, their neurochemicals are saying, yeah, that was good, do that again, do that again. And we get in the habit and we love it. And we want to do more of it. And then we're focused on being present. So we're focused on what we're experiencing and we're creating. So we're focused on the gratitude for the things that we're creating. And all of a sudden, we're happy people. My name is Isaac. I'm a storyteller. And I'm currently creating narratives for select products and my team.